feeling in the world though, right? I mean, the moment you stop trying to fit in and you've just
The latest technology, most leaders are making crucial mistakes. They're forgetting the humans. They're forgetting that the greatest technology on earth is
I was fortunate to get admission to business school, and that gave me a way to get to America. And so at a very young age, in my early 20s, I made it here, really armed with nothing but those big dreams and a suitcase full of hope. That was all. But if you recognize that, hey, I can actually amplify my innately human traits with AI, I can become exponential instead of extinct. That's the reason for hope. That today we can combine the creativity of the human mind and the power of AI to solve humanity's greatest challenges. That's a reason for hope. And even when you think what's actually damaging things, remember that very
Hey, weirdos. Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a conversation that's going to challenge everything you think you know about success, authenticity, and what it actually takes to break through in a world obsessed with fitting in. My guest, Barua, she's a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and keynote speaker who spent 25 years helping Fortune 500 companies and leaders figure out how to thrive in an AI age. But here's what makes her different. She's not interested in the corporate playbook. She's interested in what happens when you stop pretending to be somebody you're not and start showing up as yourself. And here's why this matters right now. We're living through the most disruptive decade in history. AI is rewriting the rules of work and leadership. And it and in the rush to adopt the latest technology, most leaders are making crucial mistakes. They're forgetting the humans. They're forgetting that the greatest technology on earth is still the human being. But Nikki's not here to tell you how to avoid AI or to fear it. She's here to tell you something more radical, that in a world of AI, your authenticity, your weirdness, and your unique perspective, that's what makes you exponentially more valuable, not less. And I'm saying this because Nikki and I discovered something in our pre-call. We're aligned on something fundamental. We both believe that weird isn't a liability. It's your superpower. We both believe that people who win aren't the ones who fit in the best. They're the ones who have the courage to stand out. So in this episode, we're going to dig into Nikki's story, how she went from a 24-year-old immigrant at Ernst & Young, being told to wear pantyhose and pearls and learn to play golf to become powerful, to realizing that everything she was being told to do was stripping away her actual power. We're going to talk about what actually happened when she decided to stop pretending. We're going to explore what human machine collaboration actually looks like in an AI world. And we're going to talk about how AI is becoming an accessibility tool that that's removing shame and barriers for people who have been left out of the conversation. If you're somebody who feels like you don't fit the mold, if you're somebody who's been told to change yourself to succeed, if you're somebody who's wondering how to navigate an AI world without losing your humanity, this episode's for you. Nikki, thank you for coming to the show and welcome to the Weird Canadian.
Cody, thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled for this conversation because this is exactly what people need to be talking about and embracing about themselves.
It's funny that we get to talk about this because this is the peak of why I started the Weird Canadian. Was I just defined myself. I finally understood myself and decided to say, you know what? Everybody gets to see this now. Thank you.
Feeling in the world though, right? I mean, the moment you stop trying to fit in and you're just comfortable in your skin, a whole new world opens up because you're just not trying to put yourself in a tiny little box defined by somebody else.
I'm trying to get to my partner to see the same thing, even though she's the one who brought me into this world. She does not see it the same way, but hopefully with a little bit of work, I can help her out. Let's get into a little bit of your background. Can you tell us your story?
So I was born and raised in India in the 70s and 80s. And it was a time where there was very little exposure to the outside world. There was no foreign media or products and services, no fancy magazines, none of that. So it was a very closed environment where your frame of reference tends to be very, very limited. And so that's the environment I grew up in. But I always had really big dreams, and imagination was my ally. Like, that's all. I lived in this make believe world of things that I wanted to explore about the world and about myself. And as I grew up, I believed that America is the place where those dreams would come true. Of course, it wasn't easy coming here because when you have no money and when you have no access and resources, you kind of have to figure it out on your own. I was fortunate to get admission to business school, and that gave me a way to get to America. And so, at a very young age, in my early 20s, I made it here really armed with nothing but those big dreams and a suitcase full of hope. That was all I had. No one else to lean on, and no resources that would give me a lift of any kind. And that was when you are forced to adapt to a completely foreign environment, it teaches you resilience. It teaches you how to trust yourself because there's literally nothing else that is going to see. And so I'm grateful for that. While it was a painful adjustment, I was really grateful for that experience. And that experience really shaped everything that came since, which is every disruption, every change that happened in the world, I was able to keep reinventing myself because I'd learned how to adapt. I'd learned how to trust myself. I'd learned to become self-reliant. And that continues to hold me through, it helped me through my corporate career, navigating all kinds of complex business shifts. It helped me shift from corporate to entrepreneurship and build businesses completely bootstrapped to really massive sizes, and has continued to help me even as we're now entering this entirely new agentic era of having to figure it all out because there's no easy answer.
As you were telling that story, I was kind of locked in my own world. I'm sorry, but because it reflected a lot of what I did as a child, but not in so much extent. I moved around a lot as a kid, so it was like every change was a new
Mhm.
Cody, and then I too went like to different schools. Like I wasn't satisfied with that version of Cody, so I sorry moved to a different school, tried something out, didn't work, and then I moved to a different school, tried something out, it did work, and then I went with, and then moved whole provinces. So
Yeah.
it really reflects like ongoing change, gives you a lot more perspective. Oh, you have to do this all on your own.
I can relate to the switching schools part because even while I was in India, my dad had to move around a lot for his job. And as a result, we kept moving to different towns. And each time I had to go to a whole new school and live in a whole new neighborhood and make all new friends. And there was a part of me, in the very early years, especially in elementary school, that really did not like that, because I've wanted stability and hated having to leave friends and familiarity and all of that. But what I discovered, it was every time there was a new environment, I kind of got a fresh start at becoming something or trying something different without the baggage of the past. And so what you're describing in terms of like you could create a different version of Cody, that's what I was doing. I was experimenting with different versions of me. And really what we're both talking about is shedding identities. It's not just about being resilient and adapting to change. What we're really doing is we're shedding fixed identities and embracing flexible identities that allows us to reinvent and grow into the next version of ourselves and figure out, well, this one fits, this one doesn't. Okay, well, you don't have to stay attached to it. And that was, frankly, such a powerful way of making it through any kind of environment that now, like, change is actually second nature to me. I cannot imagine being in a fixed state, or I move around a lot. Even now, I travel a lot for work. And for most people, that's kind of scary and daunting. They don't like it. But it also prevents you from growth and discovery and all the exploration that's out there in the world when you're able to embrace that kind of change.
You should have heard my parents when we told them we were moving to a rock in the middle of the end of. So yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that fresh freedom to start again, to try something new.
It also gives you a very different kind of perspective on yourself versus your connection to others. Often when our sense of connection is limited to a small community, maybe it's your immediate family, your neighborhood, your town. We start to get more and more rigid in defining ourselves only in context of that small circle. And that small circle is our inner circle who we feel union with, connection with, and everybody else is an outsider and they're different. And then we fear the outsiders. We fear what's different. We fear change and all of that. One of the benefits I've found of moving around a lot, especially, when you've done that from a younger age, is you kind of feel like a global citizen in many ways. You feel connection to people that are completely different. You can still feel a level of compassion and connection and community with everybody. And to me, that's an incredible thing of realizing we're all one. No matter what shape and places we find them.
Do you think with the digital age now, it's now harder to shed your identity as it was for us growing up?
You mean because of the digital footprint that we leave behind and the image that we do?
Yeah, my concern is around like, especially over the last 10 years, it's been like harp on people's entire history of internet to really get you.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, that person no longer exists. We
Yeah.
we grow, and just because there's a catalog of it 5 or 10 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago doesn't mean that it's
Yeah.
that person anymore. Do you think it's getting harder to shed those identities?
That's a really great question. I never thought of it in terms of the digital footprint that you leave behind. But I can speak to at least my own personal experience. I have reinvented myself several times over the last couple of decades. Sometimes I needed to, sometimes I wanted to. Either way, there's been transition points throughout. And each time I've grown into the next version of me that I was excited about. And yes, it was disconnected from the last version. And since I do have a public profile, there is definitely a trail of that online that's there. Personally, the approach I've taken is just transparency, because ultimately your relationship online to people that you're engaged with is one built on trust. And trust is comes from transparency and truth. And if you are clear about why do you need to step into this version? Why are you shedding the old version? Or what parts of you are letting go and what parts of you are you're still taking forward, um, it just translates in terms of ultimately, coming from an honest place that. So
To get back to that thought, so this drives us right into the authenticity. How does one be authentic when they have to keep on shedding their identity?
well, you're being authentic not to a fixed version of you, you're being authentic to where you are in the journey currently, rather than a point in time. If we really think of it, even from a biological perspective, we are constantly evolving, even at a cellular level. We're not static beings. Who we are today is literally at a cellular level completely different from who we were a year ago, right?
Mm.
So why hold on to fixed identities as the only thing that you would consider authentic when we're constantly changing and evolving? I think who you are at that, in the journey of who you're becoming, that is the part you have to stay true to. And for me, that's been the through line of my journey has been someone who's deeply curious, who is very growth oriented, who's very adventure seeking, an explorer, and through each version of each identity, I've simply stayed true to that through line of reinvention. Now, how I've reinvented, they look like different chapters, but there's a through line that still stays kind of true based on like a set of values and characteristics.
Very fair. can echo that in terms of like each change was I had lost a value in that process and needed it back. So I had to reset. I
Yeah.
think is and I think that's honestly a part of growth, having a fixed identity, to be constantly evolving, to be
Yeah.
constantly trying to become the best set of yourself. But then I wonder, where did those values come from? Where
For
does
me, so one of my personal practices is that every year I go through this exercise of examining my values and really asking myself, are those still true? Are those values still right for who I'm becoming? Not who I was, not who I am, but who I want to become. Are they still the right values, or do one or more need to shed or shift? And that conscious exercise, I see them as the bridge. Values are the bridge that take you authentically from where you are to where you want to be. And defining those values, gives you a way to stay true to what matters to you and get you to the right destination without getting too caught up in the roadmap itself. Sometimes when we define a very specific plan, like this is where I'm at, in 12 months, I want to get to this goal. And then we have a very rigid plan. This is exactly how we're going to do that. These are the steps we're going to take. And then we get caught up in the doing. And then we don't get to that destination and feel like everything is wrong about it. Part of what helps us effectively achieve those goals or get to our destination is being clear on a certain set of principles that are sort of our guardrails, if you will, and being flexible in the way we get it and figure out different strategies and still get to the end destination. And to me, values are those guardrails when you clearly define them. But values too need to evolve, because if you have the same set of values today that you did like 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and you haven't adapted to how the world around you is changing or how your own interests and passions and purposes change, then again, you're creating all these containers that keep you small.
I would also emphasize that throughout your life, those values and those understandings and those practices mean different things.
Well, I think you feel a sense of calling. There's a sense of knowing when it is time to shed and time to grow, and when it's time to just be okay and just be. I don't think it needs to be ritualistic or rigid to say every 3 months I need to go through this exercise where, you know, I change myself, right? Because that too becomes a sort of dogma, because now you've decided a way you're going to do it instead of being natural about it. And ultimately just consider what matters to you. If the version of you is not serving what matters, then maybe it's a sign that something needs to shift. And if it is still serving the purpose, then you're just fine.
Very. How do we how do we as a human race add this?
I think of, AI as an amplification tool, right? So whatever we are is what it has the ability to amplify, which is why when we are inauthentic and we are synthetic in how we show up in the world, it just amplifies more of that. And then you're no different from a deep fake because it's all engineered. What the power of AI is that it provides everybody with infinite intelligence. We It has democratized access to things that we never had even a couple of years ago. And but what it does not do is fill in the gaps of imagination. That is still a very uniquely human thing to do, is we have personally have infinite creativity and imagination. But now you have the power to bring those ideas to life. But what will distinguish you from anyone else or everybody else is your unique point of view, your unique taste, your imagination, your perspective, your wisdom, your experiences. That's what distinguishes you. If you fail to bring that to the table, how are you any different from every other widget that shows up, in identical ways? I mean, what makes you valuable in that case? What is it that would differentiate you? That's like going to a grocery store in the, breakfast aisle and looking at all cereal boxes that are exactly the same. Imagine if they were all brown boxes with nothing on them. How would you know one from the other? The thing that makes it different is like, oh, here's Captain Crunch versus, Cocoa Puffs, right? Like, I know what makes it unique and different.
To that point, I think that would solve a lot of the problems with our food distribution is just to like white label everything. Here's your food, like pick what you need. Might solve a lot of problems.
But, that's not what makes 8 billion people on this planet valuable is our differences. Every single one of us is wired differently, comes with a different imprint, comes with a different set of talents and skills and perspectives and, you know, purpose. And the power of AI is that we can actually amplify our differences, not that we can amplify our similarities.
It goes to a debate I have a lot of the time. It's like the AI slop debate. Like,
Mhm.
is it really AI slop? But it's like, well, no, because I sat there and I tailored exactly what I was imagining. And it's like somebody, I'll give you the prompts. I give you what you need. I can guarantee you're not going to get the same
Yeah.
because I'm adding myself to it. I'm not just adding the text. It's not
Yeah.
just the text. How do people how do people action on that? How do people like put themselves into the machine?
Bring your unique point of view to it. Start from that first rather than doing the lazy prompt of just asking AI to think for you, right? In some ways, you can think of it as it's going to mirror back to you what you put in. So if you start with emptiness, you're going to get something empty back. And that's slop, right? Because there's no depth or no substance in it. But you start with, a unique perspective that is original. Now you get something back that is built upon that and actually augments and amplifies that. I think of it as your artificial intern. If you simply give your job to the intern, it's going to do it intern level. But if you bring, your wisdom and perspective to it, now you're going to get something that is far more valuable. And it pushes, what is while we have infinite power in our hands, what's becoming the scarce commodity and really the most valuable currency is originality, because every original thought is what stands out from the rest.
It kind of begs the purpose. Like you need to have experiences. You need to go out and do things. You need to be present in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we got lucky in this digital age is we got to grow up where it was the real world was life. That was
Yeah.
purpose. It's what you did. You went out and played outside for hours. And now it's like every minute of the day is spent online.
Hmm.
How do we gain that authenticity? How do we gain that experience without
Hmm.
going outside?
Well, I definitely, I would say there was a benefit to growing out of a time where it was less digital and certainly less social media connected. But I think of it less as a separation between outside and inside and more as a intersectionality of diverse interest. It really comes down to that. And I, think back to my early college and career days. I used to envy people who were so single-minded in their focus, right? They had one subject matter expertise, they had one interest, they had one straight career path, which was very linear. They just started in a certain industry or a certain job profile, and all they did was get promoted straight up the line. No deviations, no changing lanes, no exploring other interests. And I used to envy that. And I wish that I was like that because meanwhile, my career trajectory was a patchwork of so many different experiences, so many different industries, so many different types of jobs and businesses. And it was because I was simply following my curiosity. I did not like being put in the straight line with guardrails on either end. I just wanted to break free and be adventurous and be curious and kept going through that. And sometimes I kept moving laterally because I wasn't going straight up the line. I was going, switching lanes and going in completely different areas. Today, I look at all of those experiences as the very reason why I am thriving in this AI era, because it has brought such richness of lived experiences and perspectives and depth of knowledge about so many disconnected areas versus the person who went in a straight line in one single topic. And that's what it comes down to, whether you're someone who grew up at a time where you could be playing out in the wild in the nature for hours on end, or you grew up with an iPad that you're fixated on. Either way, the point is about, explore different topics, learn about different things, dive and try different things that like bring that richness of experience rather than being single threaded.
It's funny that you mentioned that because now you just highlighted a key pain point that I think a lot of people have is a lot of people have been linear for decades, right?
Mhm.
How do we get past their concerns? Like they're losing their work, because that's essential. They
Yeah.
became so honed in their craft, and now their craft is pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. Look, there's no magic bullet or happy ending to that story. There just isn't, because the reality is right now there's such an explosion of productivity and what technology is able to do to replace certain jobs. There's just no question about it. I mean, that is frankly a necessary evolution of how society has always evolved, right? Like, when we were in the industrial age and the, and we found like when cars were built, we didn't complain about, holding on to horse carriages,
Mm.
right? At some point, you let it go and you move on to the next innovation. And the same thing is happening right now. Yes, jobs are being replaced and skills are being replaced by automation, but that is natural progress. The question is not about, the job you lost, but the question is you now have a blank canvas to be anything you can be, anything you want to be. Who do you want to become? That really brings out your unique zone of genius. Because even if your work was very repetitive or, transactional, there's still something that each of us has that's unique. Maybe it's your ability to translate complexity into simplicity. Maybe it's your ability to earn trust. Maybe it's your ability to communicate with empathy or build incredible relationships. Discover that, you know, identify that and think about how you might leverage that and partner with AI as your co-worker, as a co-evolution partner, that allows you to like lean into those parts that cannot be replaced and let go of the parts that you don't need to compete with a machine on. And that's the beauty, is that when we do it that way, it actually makes us exponential instead of makes us extinct. And that's the transition that people have to make. If you keep holding on to the job that is already obsolete, there is no future. There's no good news coming your way. No one's coming to save you. But if you recognize that, hey, I can actually amplify my innately human traits with I can become exponential instead of extinct.
You also end up with exponential amount of work because then you end up working 5 different projects, doing 30 different things. And
Yes.
I realized that the more power I have to do tasks simultaneously, the more tasks I just do simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think focus will become, in some ways, a superpower, because when everything is possible, it becomes necessary to know what is the only thing worth pursuing, and being able to eliminate all of those distractions and say no to a whole bunch of things and really direct your focus. But the same thing is true even in how we engage with people. We've become so conditioned to distractions at all times, whether it's our devices or the notifications going off or, just looking for the next best thing, that even in personal interactions, how often have you seen that where you're talking to someone and maybe it's at an event or networking thing or just a conversation and people don't maintain eye contact because they're distracted by the next thing that's grabbing their attention? And now you compare that experience to someone who it makes you feel like you're the center of their universe and they're entirely focused on you, entirely focused on the conversation, and they're deeply engaged. That person just is, extraordinary and stands out. So you go back to all those kind of skills, right? The ability to deeply focus, to be highly engaged and indistractable and unshakable. Those are the traits that will actually make us more successful now.
It's funny you mentioned that because that's what I like doing here. I just appreciate having the focused conversation between you and me. I have so many distractions, but it's like none of that matters. I can focus on this, enjoy the conversation. I want to get into what's your superpower? What are you using AI to amplify yourself?
Mhm. My superpower throughout, even pre AI, was the ability to inspire and influence with stories. And I had a long career as a strategist in business. And when you work as a strategist, yes, a large part of your job is to predict the future and to analyze things and to come up with strategic recommendations for the CEO, for the board to implement for their companies. But you can come up with the best answer and still not be able to convince someone to accept that answer. That's, the only thing that makes that difference is the ability to influence. When you can influence someone and move them to action, that is really the thing that changes a game. And I was fortunate in my career to develop that skill and really discover that I had that innate ability pretty early on. Because I remember I was like 25 years old and giving advice to Fortune 500 executives in boardrooms about massive multi-billion dollar strategies. And when you're a kid and you don't have their experiences and they're more than twice your age, it can be daunting to think, well, who am I to tell them what to do with their business? But that's the job you have. And so it forced me into those situations. It taught me what actually moves the needle and how to communicate and how to influence. And most importantly, not just influence with the same influence in order to drive the right outcomes. And when you do that over a long period of time, you kind of figure out like your unique, authentic style of doing that. And that is what has led me into becoming a public speaker or an author or an advisor. And today, AI is just amplifying more of that. It's giving me bigger scale and more tools to be able to do that. But at its core, that skill, that superpower is still a very human trait because AI can analyze and give me a strategy, but it cannot convince my audience or my clients to take that. Only I can.
Fair enough. I need to figure out how to do marketing myself because I suck at that. That was the one thing I realized I was missing as I was growing up is I had a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of emphasis on what I could do. Explaining it to people was really pain.
Mhm.
At the same time, I also had a team that understood. We used to call it Cody speak
Mhm.
because they understood me enough to be able to translate it for me for the higher ups. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much that helped me. And that's why I love AI because I'm able to break things
Well,
down
it
really
can
quickly.
be your Cody translator, right? It can be the bridge between you and your audience of doing exactly what your team used to do manually before.
Yeah, really ripping that band-aid off and coming to without them. I didn't realize how much I was relying on them. People are over investing in AI, right? How should the average user start by doing this?
Mm. I'll tell you what the wrong answer is, which is do nothing. Wait and watch is the wrong strategy right now. The speed and scale at which AI is exploding and gaining adoption worldwide, it's unlike any other technology we've seen in our in modern human history. So this is the Pandora is not going back in the box. There's no return to older times or a pre-AI age. This is only going to keep accelerating from this point on. So if you're still sort of like, well, I don't think it impacts my job or it's not as relevant to what I do or my interests, that's like saying I don't care about the internet. Today, everybody is on IO. That's like saying I don't want a mobile phone, right? There's don't shun the technology and don't wait and watch for a perfect time or a perfect reason to engage. the most important thing is dive into it, learn and build the skill, learn how to collaborate with the machine, because each person has a different journey in there, and you'll find the right answer for yourself. But it's only by doing that you're going to figure that out. There's no textbook or manual that's going to give you the perfect answer for yourself unless you're trying it out.
That's one of the reasons I don't do any like tutorials on props or anything. I'm like, I have my own flavor, my own taste, and it's not going to work for you. I can
No.
guarantee that. Because even as I build out my prompts, I build my GPTs, my LLMs, whatever I have, I mess up
Yeah.
time and time again. So like you don't truly know what you've done until it's at the end. You're like, I've got that right.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, is that it's not so much about stealing someone else's playbook or using someone else's formula, because again, then we're simply mimicking someone else's genius. That's not the point. The point is, how can you use this incredible technology to amplify yourself? And the only way you can do that is by collaborating with it directly and figuring out your answer, your path, your playbook, your.
But break it down for yourself. Essentially, steal the IQ of the most intelligent people on the planet, and then have it break it down for you so that you understand. That's
Yeah, exactly. I
how I.
mean, certain things that like anyone can leverage today, which is, when you think about the framework of, what is it you're really trying to achieve, right? What's the outcome, what problem you're trying to solve? You know, what role do you want AI to have? And this is really great to like give it the role of, someone, for example, if you're like, hey, I want to, have breakthrough growth in my life. And your role is to be Tony Robbins, right? And be my coach and help me experience that breakthrough. Here's the specific scenario I'm dealing with. Here are some of the constraints that I have. Maybe I only have like 2 weeks to, have this transformation happen. Now give me a step-by-step strategy. There's so many things of that kind that when you define the context and the constraints, you will get a much better outcome. But overall in your journey, it's not just about, the LLMs or the GPTs that you're using. It's ultimately, there are so many different tools out there. It's about your own competency and your own evolution with it. What parts of yourself do you shed that made sense before that no longer hold relevance of value in, looking forward? And that's a personal journey of discovery.
Very fair. Do you think there's going to be like a split in society? Do you think we're going to have like a new Amish era?
I do see it as the exponential divide is going to be a new kind of haves and have nots. The ones that have access and leverage the latest and greatest technology and the intelligence and, the opportunities that come with it. And they will benefit disproportionately in terms of their life, their career, their wealth creation, the power that they hold. And then those that don't have access or choose not to engage and choose not to leverage it, that will get left behind. And that is going to be an unfortunate outcome, because previous technologies or previous times in the world where there were different gatekeepers to access. Sometimes it was the powerful and the privileged. Sometimes it was the ones that had the tech know-how and some specialized knowledge. Sometimes it was governments that controlled access. Today, we have democratized access. So there's actually no reason for someone to get left behind. We can all have progress and positive things in our life. As humanity, we have more power today to solve all of the challenges over time and all of the resources. We're not resource constrained now, right? So if that's the case, then why put limits on yourself of what is possible simply because you're holding on to a limiting belief?
It's fair that you say that, because like I know of some research, a lot of anti-aging research is now coming out. So we're essentially going to cure death.
Yeah.
Then like
The impact
there's
just on medicine and science and longevity and health because of AI and gene mapping and all of those things are just going to accelerate. So in so many ways, the human condition that was defined by suffering and aging and illness and all of those things, there's hope. Yes, we may not live forever, but we may live a lot longer and a lot healthier lives. The question is, how do you want to be productive and purposeful with that life in that lifespan? And what ways do you contribute? We mean a decade from now, we may not even have to work for a living because the exchange of money for hours of effort, that concept may be gone over time, right? Where machines and robots are doing most of the work that we don't even have to be doing anymore. But if we're living long, we still need to find a purposeful way to use our time and our talents. What do
Yeah.
you wake up to do?
It comes down to like I think a few different fields. So we have exploration. We'd need humans going out into space and really exploring things. You'd have creativity. So
Mhm.
you had an entire entertainment industry that's building up because of these amazing stories people create. The sciences really would be all that would be left in terms of what
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah. But it goes back to the thing that is such a uniquely human ability, which is the ability to imagine. What differentiates us from animals or other living things is really our imagination, our ability to express that imagination. That is the thing that we all will still always have. And now we have the tools and the resources to bring that imagination alive.
How do we foster that going forward, imagination? Because I remember going through school and that's where you kind of get the imagination beaten out of you. How do we foster that in the next generation?
For me, it directly correlates to curiosity and nurturing your curiosity because imagination grows when there are different stimulations, things that stimulate you, whether it's creatively, intellectually, or emotionally. And for that, you just need catalysts. And to me, learning, whether it's books or learning from people or travel, all of those things are various ways to explore, pursue your curiosity and stoke your imagination. And often the best ideas happen at the collision of different kinds of experiences and things that you learn. So,
I'm just imagining back when I was playing in the forest and having a treehouse me and the neighbor kids built and just playing like heroes across the creek. It was fun. But those kind of activities aren't exactly allowed anymore as children. And I feel like that's kind of the pressure we feel nowadays. We helicoptered way too long and now we're seeing the repercussions in
yeah.
society.
Yeah, and that's true. But I also feel like everything kind of, swings like a pendulum. I think if we've over indexed in one direction, there's a natural sort of shift in the other direction over time. And I think the more digitally connected and isolated we get, and digitally codependent we get, we will see a return to nature and return to analog experiences and human connection. And I'm
You
already
heard
seeing that certainly in my own circle. I'm seeing more and more people that actually have like complete, digital free days and retreat into the nature more and more and look for things that are just the antidote to like, this constant cognitive overload.
Thank you for allowing me to plug that. What do you do in your spare time?
My favorite thing in the world to do is cooking. I have never trained as a chef and I hate following instructions. So I don't read cookbooks and I don't look at any recipes at all. I discovered that I just have this like strange sensory thing that I can just imagine a dish and create it completely from imagination and tapping into my senses. And so for me, that's like an example of something totally analog. There's nothing digital about it. And it's very sensory and it's very creative. And I cook almost every day and I try all kinds of different things. So that long walks in nature, I travel a lot. For me, that's incredible sort of a way to experience other people and how they think and how they live and what they eat. And those are all of the things that I absolutely love to do.
One day I hope to be able to get on the road and actually take this podcast, actually go locations, meet people, because I want to experience like that true journey. I also see myself on a stage one day, but I have no clue what I would talk about.
You'll discover it. It just comes, when you find the thing that you share that people resonate with the most across different types of demographics or different places. When it's the same idea that they resonate with, you'll discover your signature talk. That's what happened with me. One of my signature talks is about survival of the fastest. And I realized that no matter what I was talking about and who I was speaking with or where I was, it was a certain idea of adaptability and reinvention that people really resonated in what I shared with them. And it went on to become my signature talk for over 15 years. So,
Okay, I definitely need to get out and figure out a signature
mm.
talk. Is there anything we missed that you want to talk about?
um, no, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I would say, the last thing I'd leave people with is, as much as we've talked about authenticity and being authentic, it's also who you're becoming. It's not authenticity isn't just the last version of you that you're holding on tight because you're unwilling to lose it. It's also your evolution, and that comes from creativity and exploration and following your curiosity.
So get out there and buy a house in the middle of a place you've never been to before.
That's right. That's right. That's the formula.
So I'll just give you the last 5 minutes, plug where you're at, who you are, people can find you, and any last advice you have for the audience.
Yeah. Well, you can connect with me through my personal website, nikkibarua.com. I also share a weekly newsletter that is really about how to keep reinventing yourself in a fast changing world. Um, and where I share very practical tips and strategies for people to, instead of being terrified, to actually get excited about the future. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and also explore my new company, flipwork.ai.
Thank you very much. And to everybody out there, actually, before we go, you just hit on something there.
Hope in what context?
Just in that we're going to have a better future, not the doom and gloom that everybody's giving out.
So I've been in tech last 30 years and been very involved in AI. I think people should think of it as a very optimistic future, not the doom and gloom that we talk about. For sure, there's going to be some short term pain in terms of the shift of industries, the shift of roles and skills and jobs. That's natural. But that has always been the case. Every time there's been some major evolution in society, there's been some things that go away but 10 times better new things that emerge from it. And that's how we have to think about it. And when it comes to AI, for the first time, we have such incredible power to solve anything, including the things that we care about, whether it's our environment, whether it's our health and our food system, or nature, any number of those things. AI can give us, help us solve those better, faster, more cost effectively today. That's the reason for hope. That today we can combine the creativity of the human mind and the power of AI to solve humanity's greatest challenges. That's a reason for hope. And even when you think what's actually damaging things, remember that very same technology can also come up with a solution to the very thing that it may be damaging in the short term. So it's time for us to stop being fearful and worried and instead actually leverage our creativity and our imagination, and co-create with AI to build this better world for all.
That's a very fair statement. I'm going to click this out because I want people to understand that we're going to have to go through some short-term hurt for that Jetsons level future that we've been dreaming about for hundreds of years. So thank you, everybody out there. Stay weird.